Well, the neat thing about the poppers, you can cover a lot of water, and what we got here is we're in the back of a bay and you got a lot of hydrilla that's matted over. And on the edge of this, where the water starts to get deeper, you'll have isolated clumps. And a lot of them you can't see, but some of them you can. So like right there, you have a clump. When you make that cast, you know, pop it up to the clump, then stop it and let it sit. Now, whether it's a clump of grass like what we have here, whether it's a stump, a bush, the corner of a boat dock, whatever the place may be where you think a bass may be holding, do not be afraid to work it up to that. And then when you get into that magical strike zone, let the bait sit for a prolonged period of time. Pop it for about 2 or 3 feet, let it sit. Give it 3 or more, 4 or more pops. Once in a while it's a 2-pop sit, 2-pop sit. You just got to figure out that rhythm, what the fish want. If you're making it a handy meal for them, once in a while them big fish just can't resist it. You're making it easy for them. And the neat thing about it, if you get them to hit when the bait's sitting motionless, very seldom do they ever miss it. If you're moving that bait fairly fast, once in a while, they won't get it near as good and you won't get the hookup ratio. So if you can figure out how to make them eat it when it's sitting still, you hook them almost 100% of the time. The biggest thing about when you're looking for a rod for fishing topwater, you want this loose tip, almost like a crankbait tip. And the reason you want that is because it helps you put that action in. And the rod needs to be light, it needs to be comfortable because of the fact that you're doing so much with the rod. You know, with some techniques, with a stiff rod, it would be hard, you'd be almost in this motion. You gotta let that tip be doing the work for you. And so that's very, very important. You don't need a high-speed reel for this technique. It probably makes it a little bit easier, but any of the 6+1 gear retrieve ratios are fine. I don't like a real slow speed, but I don't think you need to get into the 7-to-1s in those either. Now you start throwing buzz baits and lures like that, then the real high gear ratio reels can play a greater part. But the rod's the most important part, more important than the reel actually is when it comes to fishing topwater. In other words, you're probably better off erring on the side of too light of action than too stiff of action with baits that you have to impart action in. In other words, your walking baits, like your sexy dogs, your poppers, you need the tip on the rod to be working for you. You start fishing frogs, you start fishing buzz baits, it's not quite as critical. It's all about the rod tip, having the right rod. And you always want to fish a popper on, in my opinion, on monofilament. You can do it on braid, you cannot do it on fluorocarbon. Fluorocarbon does sink, and because it sinks, it's going to want to bring the nose of the bait down, and it'll make it a lot tougher to fish. I fish it on 20-pound Senchi monofilament from Seaguard, just does an excellent job. I'm not a believer in light line for throwing poppers. I think 20 is about perfect. Color can be very, very important on your topwater baits, and for me it seems like the clearer the water, the more important it really is as far as the little subtle things. I guess they can just scrutinize the bait a little bit better. And it seems like on the bright days, it's even more important. The way to really tell whether you've got the right color or not is let the fish tell you. If you're having fish blow your bait up and not inhale it, you're having fish swirl at it, and, you know, just making an effort at it, but not really wanting it, the first thing you need to think about is the color. The second thing you need to think about is the action. You're doing something that they don't quite like and they're interested. So if they start missing my topwater baits, whether it's a buzz bait, a pop, or whatever, I'm going to start changing color to try to find a color that they will start eating good, or change the retrieve to figure out exactly what they want. Because they're wanting it. You just got to figure out what there is about it that's keeping them at the last second from inhaling it. And once you figure that out, then man, it's going to get exciting. So don't just sit there and have 10 in a row miss it before you start changing. I always want the treble hook on the back of a popper that does have a little bit of feather on there. I think it gives a little action as you're popping it and working it. And obviously when you stop it, a feather like this will kind of flutter and actually breathe a little bit, so to speak, in the water. So there's guys, there's poppers that, you know, they fish them what I call naked with no feather on the back, but I like it 100% of the time on the back of the bait. I just think it's going to get you more strikes.